The girl was only 12 years old, but her small hands trembled as they gripped the steering wheel, desperately trying to escape. When Officer Andre Lawson looked into her terrified eyes, he knew this was no ordinary traffic stop. "He's gonna find us," she whispered before losing consciousness. A missing mother, a father who was supposed to be dead, and a town hiding terrifying secrets. Andre had no idea he had just stepped into a nightmare far worse than he ever imagined. The town of Ridgeway was drowning in an eerie silence at night. The towering trees lining the road swayed gently under the cold wind. Dim streetlights cast flickering patches of light onto the asphalt, creating shifting shadows, like ghosts lurking in the darkness. Inside his patrol car, Officer Andre Lawson tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the road ahead. Midnight was the quietest hour, but it was also when the strangest things happened. The police radio crackled to life, shattering the stillness. Silver sedan driving erratically on Route 9, suspected DUI. Nearest unit, respond. Andre pressed the button, his voice calm but alert. Copy that. I'm in pursuit. He flicked on the cruiser's lights and accelerated. Within a minute, the suspect's vehicle came into view. The sedan swerved across lanes, jerking suddenly as if the driver was fighting to control the wheel. Andre frowned. This wasn't the erratic drifting of a drunk driver. Something was wrong. He honked once, signaling the car to pull over. The sedan hesitated, weaving slightly before slowly drifting to the side of the road, like the driver was debating whether to stop. Andre killed the siren and stepped out. His right hand hovered near his holster, a trained reflex. But the moment he approached the driver's side window and looked inside, his entire body went rigid. The driver was a child. She couldn't have been older than 12. Her curly hair was a tangled mess, partially obscuring a small face pale with fear. Her tiny hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. Her wide, terrified eyes locked onto his. Andre's pulse pounded in his ears. A child, driving, alone, in the dead of night. He tapped gently on the glass. The girl flinched, her whole body trembling like a trapped bird. Are you okay? Andre kept his voice low, steady. Can you roll down the window? She hesitated. 1 second. 2. Then, with shaky fingers, she pressed the button. The window slowly lowered, and the moment it did, a soft sound emerged from the back seat. A cry. Andre's breath hitched. His eyes darted past the girl. A baby, wrapped in a thin blanket, her tiny face scrunched up, fists waving weakly in the air as she whimpered. Andre felt a cold chill creep down his spine. A 12-year-old behind the wheel, a newborn in the back seat. At midnight, what the hell was happening? He turned back to the girl. Her lips were dry, her entire frame trembling. She sat frozen, like a single wrong move would shatter her completely. What's your name? He asked gently. The girl swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. Zarya? Zarya, what are you doing out here? She bit her lip, her body shaking harder. Her dark eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. Please. Her voice cracked. Don't make me go back. Andre's stomach tightened. Go back where? Zarya's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Her breath came quicker, shallower. Her small body curled inward, as if she were trying to disappear, trying to make herself so small that whatever she was running from wouldn't find her. You don't understand, she whispered, blinking rapidly. Andre's instinct screamed. She was running. From something. Someone. But before he could ask another question, something in Zarya's expression shifted. Panic. A split-second decision. Her tiny foot slammed the gas pedal. The engine roared. Andre barely caught a glimpse of her stricken face before the sedan screeched forward, tires shrieking against the pavement, leaving him standing alone in the cold, empty night. The silver sedan tore through the night like a phantom. Andre didn't think, he reacted. In one swift motion, he threw himself into the patrol car, slammed the gas pedal to the floor. Red and blue lights flared to life, casting frantic streaks of color on the desolate road. This is Officer Lawson. I have a fleeing vehicle on Route 9. The driver is a child. Repeat, the driver is a young girl. I'm in pursuit. The radio crackled, followed by a dispatcher's voice, laced with disbelief. Confirm. Did you say a child is driving? Affirmative. She's about 12 years old. There's an infant in the back seat. I need backup now. But deep down, Andre knew he couldn't wait. Zarya wasn't running from him. She was running from something else. The sedan swerved erratically, tires shrieking against the asphalt, veering dangerously with every curve. Andre's stomach twisted. She didn't know how to drive. Any second now, she could lose control. If he didn't stop her, there would be a crash. He pushed harder on the gas, narrowing the distance between them. Switching to his loudspeaker, he forced his voice to stay steady. Zarya, stay calm. Pull over. You'll be okay. I promise. She didn't respond. Her tiny hands remained locked around the wheel, her knuckles bone white. Her eyes, wide, terrified, stared straight ahead, not because she was focused on the road, but because fear had consumed every part of her. Zarya, I'm here to help you. Her small shoulders trembled. For a second, Andre thought she might listen. But then, the car lurched. No! Andre's heart seized. Zarya panicked, jerking the wheel. Too late. The sedan skidded off the road, tires screeching against loose gravel. Andre saw her face, her frail body gripping the wheel, just before the car spun out of control and plummeted into a roadside ditch. Crash! The earth trembled. A cloud of dust exploded into the air, swallowing the vehicle whole. No! Andre slammed his brakes, bolted from the car. Within seconds, he was at the wreck. The windshield was cracked. The engine sputtered weakly, struggling for life. God, please! Andre yanked open the driver's side door, holding his breath. Zarya lay slumped over the wheel, motionless. A thin trickle of blood trailed down her forehead, stark against her deep brown skin. In the back seat, the baby Imani was alive, but she was wailing, her cries slicing through the night like a desperate plea. Andre reached for Zarya, his hand firm but gentle on her shoulder. Zarya, can you hear me? Are you hurt? She didn't move. No, not like this, kid. He pressed 2 fingers against her wrist. A faint pulse. Thank God. But then, her body jerked. With a sharp, gasping breath, Zarya's eyes flew open. Wide, wild, filled with terror. Zarya, you're awake. You're gonna be okay. Her small fingers clawed at his arm. Her nails dug into his skin. And then, she whispered, her voice strangled, barely audible. He's coming. Andre froze. Zarya's entire body shook. He'll find us. He'll find us. Asterisk. Her voice shattered into a scream. Then, just as suddenly, went silent. Her body went limp once more. Andre felt a cold, creeping dread slither up his spine. Slowly he lifted his head. The road was empty. The trees stood motionless. But the night was no longer quiet. A sharp wind howled through the trees, rustling the branches like a whispered warning. And somewhere in the darkness, something was coming. Andre knew then, this nightmare was only just beginning. Ridgeway Memorial Hospital, 3:42 a.m. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting a cold, sterile glow over the room. The steady beep of a heart monitor filled the silence, blending with the occasional echo of footsteps in the hallway. Andre stood outside the hospital room, looking through the glass. Zarya Bennett sat on the hospital bed, clutching the blanket tightly in her small hands. Her eyes were vacant, staring down at the floor. A white bandage wrapped around her forehead, a reminder of the crash, of the terror that had unfolded just hours ago. Beside her, a young nurse gently rocked baby Imani in her arms, whispering soft reassurances as the infant whimpered in her sleep. But Zarya didn't look at her. She didn't look at her sister. She didn't look at the nurse. She didn't look at anything. She was a shadow of herself. Andre exhaled slowly, tightening his grip on the strap of his holster before pushing open the door. Zarya didn't react. He pulled a chair closer, lowering himself in front of her. Hey, Zarya. Silence. Andre studied her for a moment before continuing, his voice steady. You were really brave tonight? Still, she didn't lift her head. Her small fingers curled tighter around the blanket, gripping so hard her knuckles turned white. Nothing. Andre glanced at Imani, now fast asleep in the nurse's arms, her tiny chest rising and falling with each fragile breath. The only reason Zarya was still here. He tried again. Are you hungry? There's bread, warm milk, something to help you feel better. More silence. But this wasn't the silence of a stubborn child. This was the silence of someone too exhausted to fight. Andre could feel it. You know, he leaned in slightly. When I was younger, I had a little sister too. I know what it's like to want to protect someone. And I can see, you love Imani more than anything. A slight twitch. Zarya flinched just barely. It was the first sign of life he'd seen in her. Andre didn't let the moment slip. You did so well tonight, Zarya. But I need to know what happened. To help you. To help Imani. To help your mother. Immediately, Zarya tensed. Her grip on the blanket tightened until her nails dug into the fabric. Mom, the whisper barely left her lips. Andre caught it instantly. Yes, your mom. Do you know where she is? Zarya shivered. I don't know. Her voice cracked. I just know she was trying to run. Andre felt his stomach clench. Run from who? Zarya went completely still. Not because she didn't know, because she was too afraid to say. Andre placed a hand gently on the table, near hers but not touching. You can trust me, Zarya. His voice was low, careful. Whatever you know, I'll protect you. Zarya remained silent, but her small frame trembled, just slightly, just enough for him to notice. I can't. Why not? Zarya pressed her lips together. Then, she stiffened, her entire body locked up, eyes wide with something new. Andre followed her gaze. The door was ajar. Someone had been standing there, and they were gone. Someone was watching. Andre's patrol car rolled to a slow stop in front of a small house at the end of an empty street. The flickering streetlight cast a pale glow over the overgrown yard, where dry leaves lay scattered along the cracked walkway. The house was dark. No lights. No signs of life. Andre stepped out, his breath visible in the cold night air. Beside him, Officer Daniel Carter swept his flashlight toward the front door, his voice low. This doesn't feel right. Andre didn't respond. He felt it too. The front door was unlocked. With a light push, it creaked open, the sound slicing through the silence. The air inside was stale, heavy. Andre's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the small living room. Everything was still in place, but something was off. Watch your step, Andre murmured, hand hovering near his holster. They moved cautiously inside. The living room. A sofa had been knocked over. Fragments of a broken lamp lay scattered across the floor. Signs of a struggle. Andre approached the coffee table. A ceramic mug sat untouched, its bottom stained with dried coffee. Whoever had been here last left in a hurry. Daniel's flashlight swept across the wall. A faint streak of blood, no larger than a fingertip, but enough. Jesus, Daniel muttered. Andre stared at the stain, his mind flashing back to Zarya, trembling in that hospital bed. Tasha had fought. She had tried to escape, and she had lost. The kitchen. The refrigerator door hung open. Inside, nothing but a few bottles of water and an expired carton of milk. On the counter, a knife. The blade smeared with something dark, rusted. Andre glanced at Daniel. You think that's blood? Daniel swallowed hard. Only one way to find out. He pulled out an evidence bag, carefully sealing the knife inside. Andre narrowed his eyes. Something still wasn't right. Tasha had fled in fear. But from what? The bedroom. Andre stepped inside. The bed was neatly made. But on the pillow, a faint indentation, as if someone had sat there for a long time. Beside it, a framed photograph. Andre wiped the dust from the glass. Tasha Bennett, smiling, arms wrapped around her two daughters, Zarya and Imani. She looked happy. But then, Andre's gaze shifted. Something else. Something in the background. Behind the three of them, a figure. Faint, reflected in the glass of the window. A man, standing in the distance, his face swallowed by darkness. But his posture, cold, menacing. Andre, Daniel's voice cut through his thoughts. What is it? Daniel stood in the living room, eyes locked on the TV screen. He pressed play on the security footage, his voice grim. You want to see what happened to Tasha? Andre stepped closer. Security camera, 1:56 a.m. Tasha Bennett burst through the front door. She was running. No purse, no phone, just terror etched into her face. Andre's stomach twisted. Tasha sprinted toward the street. But 30 seconds later, a black SUV appeared. It followed her. The door opened. Tasha vanished. Into footage. Daniel quietly switched off the screen. Both men stood there, motionless. Andre clenched his fists. She never came back. No body. No calls for help. No trace. Just Zarya and Imani left behind. And whoever was behind this was still out there. Andre stood motionless in front of Tasha Bennett's house. The air was sharp with early morning chill. A faint breeze rustled through the empty street, sending dry leaves skittering across the pavement. Inside, Daniel was still collecting evidence. But Andre had a feeling, a presence, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. His gaze swept over the quiet neighborhood. Nothing but darkened houses, their windows shut tight, curtains drawn. No movement, no lights, but the feeling didn't go away. Someone was watching him. A familiar tension coiled in his chest, police instinct screaming a warning. Slowly, Andre stepped down from the porch, moving toward the curb. A car sat parked a few houses down. Engine off, headlights dark, but someone was inside. Andre narrowed his eyes. The windshield was too tinted to see clearly, but there was no doubt. A figure sat behind the wheel, unmoving, observing. Andre's fingers brushed instinctively against the grip of his holstered gun. Something wasn't right. He advanced, steps slow and deliberate, eyes locked on the vehicle. 20 feet. 15. His fingers unclipped the radio on his belt. Daniel, get outside. I've got a suspicious vehicle. 10 feet. 5. Then, the car's headlights flared to life. Blinding. Andre shielded his eyes for half a second. And in that moment, the engine roared. The car lunged forward. Andre's gun was in his hand in an instant. Stop! No hesitation. The driver floored it, tires screeching as the sedan veered sharply onto a side street, leaving a long black streak on the pavement. Andre bolted for his patrol car, slamming the radio. Suspect vehicle, black sedan, tinted windows, license plate. He stopped. No plates. Shit. Behind him, Daniel burst out of the house. What the hell just happened? Andre stared after the car's fading taillights. Someone's watching this case, and they know we're investigating. Daniel's jaw tightened, his grip on his gun firm. Who do you think they are? Andre inhaled deeply. The image of the black SUV from the security footage flashed through his mind. Tasha had vanished just 30 seconds after that vehicle appeared. No coincidence. He turned back to Tasha Bennett's darkened house, to the shadows swallowing everything around them. I don't know who they are. His voice was low, cold. He met Daniel's gaze. But I know one thing. His eyes were sharp as steel. We're not the only ones hunting for Zarya and Imani. Ridgeway Memorial Hospital remained cloaked in the stillness of early morning. Outside, weak sunlight filtered through the windows, but it did little to dispel the heavy weight pressing down on Andre. He moved quickly down the long hallway, his footsteps heavier than usual. I need a name, a lead, anything. Tasha Bennett had vanished. Someone was watching this case, and Zarya was too terrified to speak the truth. Andre stopped in front of the records office. Behind the desk sat a middle-aged woman with thick-rimmed glasses. She looked up as he knocked lightly on the counter. Officer Andre Lawson. I need to see Zarya Bennett's medical records. The woman frowned, her tone cautious. Do you have a warrant? Andre pulled out his badge, his voice firm. Zarya Bennett and her infant sister are key witnesses in an active missing persons case. I need to know who their legal guardian is. The woman hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. She flipped through a few files, typed into the system, and finally retrieved a folder from a cabinet. Here, she said, placing it in front of him. Andre opened the file, his eyes scanning the text quickly. Zarya Bennett, 12 years old. Imani Bennett, 7 months old. Mother, Tasha Bennett. Father. Andre's breath hitched. A name. Derek Marshall. A cold weight settled in his chest. That name was far from unfamiliar. But there was one problem. Derek Marshall had been dead for 4 years. Andre straightened, his gaze sharp as he looked up at the hospital clerk. This man, Derek Marshall. Does the hospital have any additional records on him? The woman frowned, flipping through a few more pages. Not much. He was never listed on any of Tasha Bennett's prenatal visits or during the birth records. But his name appears as the father on both children's medical files. Andre's jaw clenched. Derek Marshall, a name that once struck fear in the underworld. A trafficker, a man who worked for one of the most notorious crime syndicates. And most importantly, his body was never found. A cold shiver ran down Andre's spine. If Derek Marshall was truly dead, why was his name on Zaria's records? Or worse, if he was never dead at all, then what the hell was coming for these 2 children? Ridgeway Police Department. Andre shoved open the door to the investigation room, striding toward the central computer station. The scent of stale coffee lingered in the air. A few officers sat at their desks, exhaustion still etched on their faces after a long night. But Andre didn't notice them. He needed answers. Derek Marshall. If he was truly Zaria and Imani's father, then his records had to be somewhere in the system. Andre sat down and typed the name into the national database. The screen flickered. No results. He frowned. Re-entered it. Still nothing. What the hell? Derek Marshall didn't exist in the system. That wasn't possible. He was a known trafficker and notorious criminal. Andre had heard his name in investigations 4 years ago. The police had confirmed his death in a gang execution. And yet, no records, no birth date, no social security number, no known address, no death certificate, nothing. It was as if he had never existed. Andre's grip on the mouse tightened. A creeping unease spread through his chest. Someone had wiped everything. But why? 8 a.m. What exactly are you digging into, Andre? A voice came from behind. Andre turned. Officer Lisa Carter, one of the department's top cybercrime investigators. She stood with a large cup of coffee in hand, her dark hair neatly tied back. Andre didn't hesitate. He spun the monitor toward her, pointing at the name. I need to pull this guy's records. But there's nothing in the system. Lisa frowned, setting her coffee down. Let me try. She sat beside him, fingers flying over the keyboard. If he had a file at some point, there should still be traces, even if someone tried to erase it. I'll check the archive logs. Her hands moved swiftly, running a specialized query. 1 minute passed. 2. Then, a file popped up. Derek Marshall, criminal record, code 457X. Andre leaned in. Lisa clicked to open it. The screen flickered. Then, blackout. Lisa froze. What the hell? She tried typing. No response. Did the system just lock us out? A sharp chill crawled up Andre's spine. Someone doesn't want us seeing this. Lisa's expression hardened. Let me try something else. She bypassed the main system, accessing the federal data archives. This time, a message flashed across the screen. Data has been erased. Goosebumps rose on Andre's skin. Lisa slowly turned to him, her eyes wide. Someone wiped him from the entire federal database. Andre's heart pounded. This was no coincidence. Derek Marshall wasn't just some low-level trafficker. He had protection. Someone powerful enough to erase his entire existence from law enforcement records. Lisa swallowed hard, her voice low but firm. If he's really dead, then why delete his records? Andre exhaled sharply. There was only one explanation. Because he was never dead to begin with. Ridgeway Memorial Hospital. The air in the hospital room felt thick, suffocating. Zaria sat curled up in the corner of the bed, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, as if she could shrink small enough to disappear. Morning light streamed through the window, casting a soft glow on her dark skin. But it wasn't enough to chase away the cold surrounding her. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She was hiding. Andre stood by the door, watching her carefully. This child had seen something that had shaken her to the core. He stepped closer, making sure his movements were slow, deliberate. Even the slightest noise could send her retreating further into herself. Pulling a chair beside the bed, he sat down. "Zaria." His voice was calm, gentle, patient. No response. She didn't look up, didn't blink. She was trapped in a place where only her and her terror existed. Andre's voice softened even more. "You're safe now, Zaria. No one can hurt you here." A flicker of movement, barely noticeable, but it was something. She was listening. Slowly, Andre pulled out his phone, scrolling to an image. Derek Marshall. Sharp features. Cold, empty eyes. He placed the phone on the bed, just inches from her. "Have you ever seen this man before?" Zaria went completely still. 1 second. 2. Then, she started shaking. At first, just a tremble, but then it grew. Violent. Her breathing turned shallow and erratic. Her small fingers clenched the blanket so tightly her knuckles turned white. "No, no, no, no." Her voice cracked, barely a whisper. A chill ran down Andre's spine. "Zaria, do you recognize him?" She shook her head over and over, gasping for air, shoulders trembling. "No, no, no." Andre felt a tightness in his chest. "Where did you see him?" Zaria's eyes flew open. Then, she bolted upright and screamed. "He was in my house last night." Andre shot to his feet. "What?" Zaria was shaking violently, her small hands gripping the fabric of her hospital gown, twisting it in sheer panic. "I saw him. He was standing in my doorway." Her breath came in frantic, broken gasps, as if just remembering was suffocating her. "He was looking at me. He just stood there, saying nothing, but I knew. I knew he was waiting." "Waiting for what, Zaria?" Andre crouched, leveling his gaze with hers, urgency thick in his voice. She shuddered. "Waiting to take me, waiting to take Amani. He wants us." Then she broke, not just crying, sobbing. Not the cries of a scared child, but the wails of someone being hunted. Andre felt something twist painfully in his chest. This wasn't a lie. No child could fake fear like this. His eyes. Zaria's voice quivered. His eyes were empty. Andre clenched his jaw. "Zaria, are you absolutely sure? Are you sure it was Derek Marshall?" She nodded furiously, tears streaming down her face. "He's dead, right?" "He's dead, isn't he?" Andre didn't answer, because for the first time, he wasn't sure. If Derek Marshall was truly dead, how the hell was he standing in Zaria's house last night? Or worse, if he had never died at all, what did he want? Zaria sobbed uncontrollably, curling into herself, gripping her arms as if she could hold herself together. "He won't stop. I know he'll find us." Andre inhaled sharply, running a hand over his face, forcing himself to think. Derek Marshall, the infamous trafficker, the man the world believed was dead for the past 4 years. And yet, his daughter was sitting right in front of Andre, saying he was back. And Andre knew this nightmare had only just begun. 9:58 p.m. Ridgeway Child Protective Center. The Ridgeway Child Protective Center sat on the northern edge of town, an aging, 2-story building with peeling white paint and a sagging roof. The dim yellow glow from the streetlights barely cut through the heavy darkness pressing in from all sides. Andre leaned against his patrol car, eyes locked on the building. Inside, Zaria and Amani were asleep. At least he hoped they were. But something felt wrong. Years on the force had sharpened his instincts. He had seen enough to know that absolute silence often meant a storm was brewing. Every part of him screamed that something was coming. But there was no reason to worry, right? The center was secure. 2 officers were stationed outside. Another officer was inside, monitoring the children. No one could get in without being seen. So why did this feeling, this creeping, suffocating unease, refuse to leave him? 10:05 p.m., second floor, Zaria and Amani's room. Zaria couldn't sleep. She lay on her bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Silence. She hated the silence. Whenever it settled around her, her mind dragged her back into the nightmare of the other night. The door creaking open, a shadow standing there, motionless, empty, soulless eyes staring straight at her. And then, a whisper from the darkness. Did you really think you could hide, Zarya? Her small fingers clenched the blanket, gripping it as if it could shield her from a memory. But then, a breeze slipped through the window crack. The curtain shifted. Zarya froze. No, the window was supposed to be closed, wasn't it? Slowly, she turned her head toward it. Outside, only darkness. Nothing there. But she felt something, as if someone was standing out there, watching, waiting. 10:15 p.m., outside the Child Protective Center. Andre felt it now, a deep, unnatural chill, not from the cold, but from the knowledge that something was off. He scanned the empty street. The two officers stood at their posts, but they looked relaxed. Too relaxed. He didn't like that. Maybe he was just being paranoid. But then, a black car crawled past the street corner, moving too slow, far too slow. Andre tensed, eyes tracking every movement. No headlights, no license plate. Then, it vanished into the shadows. Like a ghost. Andre's hand went to his radio. Daniel, I just saw a suspicious vehicle. Black sedan, no plates, moving slowly near the center. Daniel's voice crackled through the speaker. Did you catch a plate number? No, but something isn't right. A pause. Then Daniel spoke, tone sharpening. You want backup? Andre glanced at the two officers standing outside. They weren't paying attention. They should be. Yeah, and make it fast. His heartbeat picked up. Something was about to happen. He could feel it. 10:26 p.m., Ridgeway Child Protective Center. The darkness fell suddenly. One moment, the warm yellow lights still glowed against the ceiling, casting long shadows down the hallway. The next, blackness. No warning, no flickering, just an eerie, suffocating silence. Zarya froze in bed, her breath catching in her throat. She blinked rapidly, but it made no difference. Power outage? No. If it were a power failure, at least the emergency lights would still be on. But this time, everything was off. She swallowed hard, a cold shiver crawling down her spine. Don't panic. There are police outside. No one can get in. Then, she heard it. A tiny sound in the dark. Click. A hand on the doorknob. 10:27 p.m., back parking lot. Andre looked up just as the entire facility went dark. Pop. The streetlights gone. The building's lights gone. His radio crackled instantly. Andre, are you seeing this? I see it. The power's been cut. Shit. All the cameras are down. We've lost everything. Andre's jaw tightened. This wasn't random. Someone was already inside. Without hesitation, he pulled his gun and ran toward the building. Outside, the two officers stationed at the front entrance looked around in confusion. Report. Did anyone see anything? Andre barked. One officer shook his head, voice tense. No, no one came in. We didn't see anyone. Andre didn't believe it. His instincts screamed at him. Then, a gunshot split the night. 10:28 p.m., second floor hallway. Boom! The door lock exploded. Zarya's bedroom door swung, open violently. Two figures stepped inside, dressed head to toe in black, faces hidden behind masks. Zarya bolted upright. She didn't have time to think. No! But a cold, gloved hand grabbed her wrist. Pulled hard. Zarya thrashed wildly, kicking, screaming. Don't touch me. Help! Somebody help! No one heard her. The room was silent. The alarms had been disabled. The police downstairs had no idea what was happening. One of the masked figures clamped a cloth over her mouth, muffling her screams. Dragged her from the bed. Zarya fought, nails digging into the attacker's arm, kicking, twisting, but they were too strong. She was being taken. Then, she realized they hadn't touched Imani. They were only taking her. Terror crashed over her like a tidal wave. No, don't leave my sister. Please. No answer. No mercy. Her small fingers clawed desperately at the doorframe, trying to hold on. But with one final yank, they pulled her into the hallway. And then, she saw him. A figure standing just ahead. No mask. No need to hide. Zarya went still. Everything stopped. Her heart missed a beat. No. No, no, no. He was dead. He had to be dead. The man looked down at her, his expression calm, eyes as cold as ever. Then, he crouched to her level, staring into her terrified gaze. And he smiled, leaned in, whispered, "Did you really think you could hide from me, Zarya?" 10:29 p.m., Ridgeway Child Protective Center. Andre sprinted down the darkened first-floor hallway, gun drawn, footsteps echoing against the empty walls. The only light came from the beam of his flashlight, casting sharp, shifting shadows. His radio crackled with urgency. "Daniel, Andre, we have intruders. I'm sending backup now. Andre, damn it, they've already made it inside." The gunshot from earlier had thrown the officers outside into chaos. But Andre knew whoever had broken in wasn't here to fight the cops. They were here for the children. He skidded to a halt in front of the main power panel, flipping the switch. Nothing. The system was completely disabled. Grinding his teeth, Andre turned toward the staircase. Then his phone vibrated in his pocket. An unknown number. His instincts screamed at him. Who the hell was calling him now? He hesitated only for a second before answering. The voice on the other end was low, gravelly. "Get the kids out. He's coming." 10:30 p.m., second floor hallway. Zarya was being dragged into the darkness. A gloved hand clamped around her wrist, an iron grip pulling her forward. Her breathing was ragged, panicked. Everything was happening too fast. 1 minute ago, she had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Now, she was being ripped into a nightmare. The masked man didn't speak. He just moved with deliberate, heavy steps, leading her down the unlit hallway. Then she heard it, a familiar sound. Crying. Imani. Her heart nearly stopped. They had taken the baby. No, no. She twisted her body, kicked out with all her strength, her foot slamming into the man's shin. He grunted in pain, his grip loosening for just a second. Zarya didn't hesitate. She yanked free, lunging toward the nearest door. But before she could run, another hand clamped down on her wrist. Stronger, colder. She froze. A voice whispered in her ear. "Try to run again, Zarya." Her stomach dropped. Slowly, she turned her head. Derek Marshall stood behind her, calm, unshaken, like he had never been gone. Zarya's breath hitched. No, 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 no. He was dead. He was supposed to be dead. Derek's grip tightened around her small wrist, his eyes never leaving hers. "I told you, no one escapes." Zarya opened her mouth to scream, but a second hand covered her lips. In the distance, Imani's cries echoed through the building. Then, everything went silent. 10:32 p.m., first floor stairwell. Andre took the steps 2 at a time, pulse hammering. "Get the kids out. He's coming." The warning played over and over in his mind. Who was calling him? What did they know? Who was coming? No time to think. He had to get to the kids. Fast. But as he reached the second floor, he came to a dead stop. The door to Zarya's room was wide open. Empty. No Zarya. No Imani. Andre felt a wave of ice rush through his veins. No. No, no, no. His radio crackled. "Daniel. Andre, the backup surveillance just kicked in. You need to see this." 10:33 p.m., second floor, Ridgeway Child Protective Center. The room was empty. Zarya wasn't there. Imani wasn't there. No signs of a struggle. No screams. No broken furniture. Nothing. Just a hollow, lifeless space. Andre stood frozen in the doorway. His entire body was tense. His instincts had told him this was coming, but his mind still refused to accept it. No. No way. The kids couldn't have just vanished. His radio crackled. "Andre, I have footage from the backup camera. You need to see this now." Andre spun on his heels and ran. 10:35 p.m., security room. Daniel sat in front of the monitors, his fingers flying across the keyboard, scrubbing through the recovered footage. The entire security system was down for 3 minutes. But one camera didn't cut out. He pointed to the screen. Andre leaned in. The image was grainy. A dimly lit hallway on the second floor. Most of the frame was swallowed by darkness, except for a faint streak of emergency lighting. Then, 2 figures emerged, masked, one carrying Imani, the other dragging Zarya. The girl struggled, fought back, but she was no match for the strength of her captor. Andre felt ice settle in his veins. But the worst part was yet to come. The footage kept playing. Another figure stepped into the frame. He wasn't wearing a mask. He walked slowly, deliberately, as if he had all the time in the world. He was carrying Imani in his arms. Then he lifted his head, looked directly into the camera, and smiled. Andre's grip on the desk tightened until his knuckles turned white. Derek Marshall. Daniel sucked in a sharp breath, trying to stay calm. If he's alive, then where the hell has he been for the past 4 years? Andre didn't answer. His eyes were locked onto the screen. Derek was still staring straight into the camera. His smile never wavered. Then slowly, he lifted a finger to his lips. Shoo. The screen cut to black. Andre clenched his jaw. We find the kids. Now. 11:17 p.m. Ridgeway Police Department. The atmosphere inside the investigation room was suffocating. Andre stood motionless, eyes locked on the board in front of him. Dozens of pinned photographs stared back. Zaria, Imani, Tasha Bennett, Derek Marshall. They were gone. Derek had taken the children right under their noses, leaving behind nothing but a taunting message. Andre clenched his jaw. For years ago, law enforcement had believed Derek Marshall was dead. They were wrong. And now, Andre couldn't afford to make another mistake. His radio crackled. Daniel, Andre, I got a source. An ex-trafficker says he knows where they're headed. Andre spun around. Where is he? 11:45 p.m., a rundown bar, outskirts of Ridgeway. A flickering neon sign cast pale, shifting light onto the dusty road. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the stale scent of cheap liquor. Andre stepped through the door, his gaze sweeping the dimly lit room. In the darkest corner, a man sat slouched against the wall, idly swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Luis Mercado, a retired trafficker, a man who had once worked with Derek Marshall. Andre wasted no time. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from Luis, his stare cold and unwavering. Where is he? Luis looked up, eyes weary. Cops? Thought you guys buried him 4 years ago. Andre didn't blink. He's not dead, and he has 2 innocent kids. Luis exhaled slowly, reaching for his bottle. But Andre was faster. His hand shot forward, grabbing Luis by the collar, yanking him closer. Tell me, right now. Luis frowned, but there was no defiance in his gaze. He was scared. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice low, deliberate. He's leaving town at dawn. Andre's grip tightened. Where? Luis hesitated, then locked eyes with Andre. The docks. He's loading cargo onto a ship to get out of here. Andre's pulse pounded in his skull. What time? Luis swallowed hard. Before sunrise. Andre pushed back from the table. He couldn't waste another second. He had the lead he needed. 11:59 p.m. Ridgeway Police Department parking lot. Andre yanked open the car door, sliding into the driver's seat. His radio blared to life. Daniel, Andre, FBI just got word. They're locking down Dock 12. Derek's not getting out of this. Andre froze. Dock 12? Daniel, yeah. Your intel was dead on. Derek's prepping to move out from Dock 12 with a cargo freighter. But Andre knew something was wrong. Luis never mentioned Dock 12. He only said the docks. Andre narrowed his eyes, his mind racing. Derek wasn't stupid. He wouldn't go somewhere predictable. He needed a spot no one would expect. A dock not covered in the FBI's operation. No way. Andre tightened his grip on the wheel. He was at Dock 5, and Andre was the only one who knew it. 12:15 a.m. en route to the docks. Andre's patrol car tore through the night, tires screeching against the asphalt. The engine roared, mirroring the fury building inside him. FBI had their eyes set on Dock 12. But that was just a decoy. Derek was always one step ahead. If Andre was right, they were at Dock 5. There's no time to second guess. If I'm wrong, I lose everything. If I'm right, I save those kids. 12:32 a.m. Dock 5. Dock 5 was cloaked in darkness. No floodlights, no guards, no sign of the FBI, just a massive cargo ship looming in the shadows. Andre killed the headlights and eased the car forward. The salty breeze swept through the pier, carrying an eerie stillness. No sounds, but he could feel them. Someone was here, and they were waiting. Andre drew his gun, crouching low as he moved across the wooden planks of the dock. His boot grazed an old, creaking board. Crack! A sound barely louder than a whisper, but it was enough. A voice sliced through the darkness. He's here. Then, blinding light. Spotlights flooded the dock. Four rifles locked onto Andre. 12:35 a.m., the ship's deck. Andre raised his hands slightly, scanning his surroundings. 4 men, armed. These weren't amateurs. But Andre wasn't focused on them. His eyes locked onto one figure, Derek Marshall. He stood at the center of the deck, hands casually tucked into his coat pockets. Calm, unbothered, like he had seen this coming all along. And beside him, Imani. The baby rested in his arms. Andre's pulse pounded in his ears. Derek wasn't using a gun. He wasn't restraining her. He was holding Imani as if she belonged to him. Derek smirked. I knew you'd come, Andre. Andre's voice was a low growl. Put the baby down. Derek chuckled, shaking his head. You think you can give me orders? Andre's grip on his gun tightened. Derek, I don't care what you want. I just want the kids. Give them to me, and you can walk away. Derek scoffed. You really think I'd let my daughter go that easily? Zarya. Andre's heart pounded harder. Where is Zarya? Derek shrugged. Somewhere on this ship. Andre's mind raced. He's stalling. Zarya was still on board. That meant there was still a chance to save her. Derek took a step forward. The yellow floodlights cast deep shadows over his face, making his smirk even more menacing. You know, Andre, I've always wondered if I hadn't faked my death, could I have rebuilt everything? Andre didn't answer. He knew what Derek was doing. He was buying time, and that meant Zarya was still alive. He just needed to find a way to break Derek's hold. Then, Derek's grip on Imani tightened. A blade gleamed in his free hand. The tip of the knife hovered less than an inch from Imani's tiny neck. Andre's finger curled around the trigger. You touch her, and I swear, you won't take another breath. Derek laughed, his eyes glittering with amusement. Are you really going to shoot, Andre? While I'm holding her. Andre inhaled slowly. Derek was playing mind games. He knew Andre wouldn't take the shot. I need another way. Andre's eyes flicked across the deck. Stacks of cargo crates behind Derek. Only about 6 feet between him and the edge of the ship. If he could just knock him off balance. I just need one chance. Andre steadied his aim. Then he took a step forward. So, Derek, I think it's time we end this game. 12:42 a.m. aboard the cargo ship. The ocean wind howled across the open deck, carrying a bone-chilling cold through the night air. Floodlights from parked trucks cast long shadows, stretching the figures of 2 men standing face to face. Andre stood firm, gun aimed straight at Derek Marshall. A few feet away, Derek clutched Imani in his arms. The gleaming edge of a knife pressed against the baby's delicate skin. She didn't cry. Imani was too young to understand, but her wide, unblinking eyes gazed up at the man holding her, as if she knew, as if she could sense the breath of death lingering beside her. Andre tightened his grip on the trigger, but his hand remained steady. Derek smirked. Do you really think you can win, Andre? Andre didn't respond. There was no time for Derek's mind games. There was only one objective, getting Imani back. A direct attack? Too risky. Derek would react instantly. A shot to the shoulder? Possible, but dangerous with the baby in his arms. I need an opening. Then, a flicker of movement behind Derek caught Andre's attention. He didn't react outwardly, but his mind sharpened. Zarya. She was crouched behind a stack of cargo crates. Her eyes locked onto Andre's, and she understood. She was waiting for a chance. Andre would give it to her. The wind howled louder, whipping the tarps over the shipping containers, rustling like whispers in the dark. Andre shifted his gaze ever so slightly to the left, a subtle raise of his brow. Zarya saw it. She bit her lip, inhaled deeply. Then, she moved. Zarya sprang up, bolting forward like a gust of wind. Derek noticed, but the moment he turned, Andre fired. Bang! The gunshot cracked through the air like a lightning strike. The bullet buried itself deep into Derek's right shoulder. He roared in pain, staggering backward. The knife slipped from his grip. Zarya lunged, snatching Imani from his arms. "Run, Zarya!" Andre bellowed. Zarya clutched her baby sister close and sprinted toward the edge of the ship. Derek growled, blood seeping through his coat. But he didn't fall. He turned back, eyes wild with rage. Andre tightened his grip on the gun, ready to fire again. But Derek lunged. The impact sent both men crashing onto the steel deck. Andre's gun skidded away, disappearing into the shadows. Derek landed on top of him, swinging the first punch. Andre dodged, twisting his body and slamming his elbow into Derek's ribs. Derek grunted, but didn't let up. He reached into his coat and pulled out another knife. The blade glinted under the floodlights. Andre grabbed Derek's wrist, straining to hold back the blade. But Derek was stronger than he looked. Slowly, the knife inched closer. Hot breath, thick with blood and sweat, fanned against Andre's face. "You can't beat me, Andre," Derek snarled. Andre gritted his teeth, every muscle straining. But Derek was pressing down with his full weight. The blade was too close, mere inches from his throat. Andre's grip was slipping. He had seconds. Then he made his move. With all his strength, Andre slammed his forehead into Derek's nose. The impact was brutal. Derek reeled back, momentarily dazed. That was all Andre needed. He surged forward, landing a devastating punch to Derek's jaw. Derek stumbled, his boots scraping against the steel edge of the deck. Andre rose to his feet, breathing hard. "It's over, Derek." Derek wiped the blood trickling from his mouth. Then he laughed. A sick, twisted grin spread across his face, teeth stained red. "You think so?" Then he charged again. Derek lunged like a cornered animal. Andre didn't have time to dodge. The two men collided, slamming hard onto the wooden deck. Derek straddled Andre, knife glinting under the floodlights. He put all his weight into the strike, driving the blade straight down. Andre gritted his teeth, twisting at the last second. The blade sank into his shoulder instead of his chest. Blinding pain shot through his body, but it wasn't fatal. Andre used the momentum, rolling to the side, forcing Derek off balance. They tumbled across the deck, struggling in the darkness. Derek roared, landing a vicious punch to Andre's face. Blood filled Andre's mouth, metallic and sharp. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop, not when Zarya and Imani were still on this ship. Andre braced himself, then drove his knee into Derek's ribs. Derek growled but held onto the knife. Andre's eyes flicked toward the edge of the ship. Just a little more. One push, one mistake from Derek, and this would end, for good. The wind howled violently. Derek's eyes burned with fury. His only thought now was to kill. He swung again. Andre dodged, but the knife flashed out. No choice left. Andre roared, grabbing Derek's wrist, pushing back with everything he had. The two men grappled, locked in a brutal fight right at the ship's edge. "You can't kill me, Andre," Derek rasped, voice dripping with venom. Andre's lip curled, blood trickling from his mouth. "I don't have to." Derek's expression flickered with confusion. Then, Andre let go. Off balance, Derek stumbled backward. One step, two steps. Then, he fell. Splash. Derek's body slammed into the black water below. His scream was cut short. The ocean swallowed him whole. No sign of him resurfacing. Nothing left. Only the dark, endless sea. Andre lay on the deck, his body screaming in pain, blood soaking through his coat. Was it over? Soft footsteps echoed nearby. Andre forced himself to sit up. Zarya. She clutched Imani tightly in her arms, her small frame trembling. Her face was streaked with tears, but not of fear, of release. Andre managed a weak smile despite the pain. "You did good, Zarya." The little girl burst into sobs and ran straight into his arms. 1:12 a.m. Ridgeway Harbor. The dock was awash in flashing red and blue lights. The crackle of radios filled the cold night air as FBI agents swarmed the area, combing through every corner of the cargo ship. Andre sat on the wooden planks, his back resting against a shipping crate. His breaths were still heavy, his shoulders slick with blood from the unbandaged wound. But the pain didn't matter. His eyes remained locked on the dark, endless water below. No body, no sign of life. Only the waves, lapping against the hull, indifferent and silent, as if they had never swallowed a monster. This time, Derek Marshall was truly gone. Andre inhaled deeply, letting the salty air fill his lungs. It was over. Zarya sat on the deck a few feet away, clutching Imani tightly against her chest. She refused to let go, even when a paramedic approached to check on the infant. Her small hands gripped her sister protectively, as if loosening them, even for a second, would mean losing her again. Andre watched her, a strange feeling stirring inside him. The feeling of someone who had pulled something precious back from the dark. Zarya lowered her head, as if struggling with something. Then, after a long silence, she lifted her gaze toward Andre. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but deep inside them, there was a quiet determination. I thought. Her voice was small, but every word landed with weight. I thought no one would believe me. Andre felt something tighten in his chest. But you did. Her fingers trembled as she hesitantly reached out. Andre looked at her for a moment, then slowly placed his hand in hers. A handshake. No words were needed. Everything was in that grip. Gratitude, trust, a promise unspoken. 1:45 a.m., Ridgeway Memorial Hospital. Tasha Bennett was found. She had been locked in an abandoned warehouse, exhausted, battered, but alive. When they brought her into the hospital room, her frantic eyes searched the space, wild with the terror of a mother who had lost everything. Then, she saw them. Zarya, Imani. Nothing could hold her back. She ran, arms outstretched, collapsing around her daughters. Zarya broke down in her mother's embrace. But this time, her tears were not of fear. They were of homecoming. Andre stood in the doorway, watching silently. For a brief moment, the world was still. This family had been given a second chance. And for Andre, that was enough. Ridgeway Police Department. The early morning mist still clung to the air, as the first rays of sunlight began breaking through the gray clouds. Andre sat in his patrol car, silently watching the road ahead. The town of Ridgeway was waking up after a long night. Everything looked normal, but Andre knew. Last night had changed everything. Not just because of the case, not just because of the fight with Derek Marshall, but because of two children, Zarya and Imani. They had lost so much, but they still had each other. They still had a future. Sometimes you can't save the whole world, but sometimes saving just one life is enough. Andre took a deep breath, then turned the ignition. The patrol car rumbled to life, rolling slowly into the quiet morning streets of Ridgeway. A new day had begun. A new case awaited. But at least this time, he had saved a family. And for Andre Lawson, that was all that mattered. The story of Andre Lawson is more than just a high-stakes chase between good and evil. It is a testament to the power of trust, courage, and responsibility in the modern world. In a time of uncertainty, it is easy to lose faith in justice, to doubt the people around us. But like Andre, we must stand firm in protecting what is right, no matter how impossible the odds may seem. If someone needs help, don't turn away. A single act of kindness can change the course of a life. Stay vigilant. Stay aware. Never allow the safety of yourself and those you love to be compromised. Justice is not just written in the laws we follow. It lives in the choices we make every single day. The battle may be over, but darkness still lurks in the shadows. What other secrets lie beneath the surface? Comment your thoughts and subscribe for more thrilling stories, where justice is never as simple as it seems.